The notification came at 7:40, 3 inches the morning, while I was sitting in a meeting I didn't care about, pretending to take notes. My phone buzzed against the table. I glanced down out of habit, expecting spam or a delivery update. It was my bank. Transaction alert. Withdrawal of $47,500 from savings account ending in 2291. Initiated by authorized user. I stared at the screen until the words stopped making sense. Authorized user, that was me. Except, I hadn't touched that account in 11 months. I stood up, mumbled something about a family emergency, which, as it turned out, was exactly what it was, and walked out of the conference room without looking back. My hands were steady. My chest was not. I sat in my car in the parking garage and pulled up the full transaction history. $47,500. Gone. And that was just this morning. My name is Rachel Donovan. I'm 31 years old. I'm a senior auditor at a mid-sized financial firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. My job, quite literally, is to find exactly what I was now looking at: money that moves when it shouldn't, through hands it doesn't belong to. The irony wasn't lost on me. I called my brother. He picked up on the second ring, which was unusual. My brother, Daniel, almost never picked up before the fourth. "Hey, Rach." His voice was light, almost rehearsed. "Daniel," I said slowly, "did you access my savings account this morning?" A pause. One beat too long. Mom needed it. We were going to explain tonight at dinner. The call dropped before I could respond. Or maybe I hung up. I honestly couldn't tell you. I sat there for a long moment, watching a pigeon waddle across the concrete floor of the parking garage. Normal. Purposeful. Completely unbothered. I thought about my mother, Patricia Donovan, sitting at her kitchen table right now, probably drinking the expensive coffee she claimed she couldn't afford. I thought about Daniel, who had a key to my apartment because I trusted him. I thought about the dinner invitation I'd received 2 days ago, the one he'd framed as casual, spontaneous, just the three of us. It's been a while. It hadn't been spontaneous at all. Something inside me went very quiet. I opened my phone again and texted my attorney. "I need to talk. Today. It's urgent." Then I put the car in drive, went back to the office, and finished my meeting like nothing had happened. Because that's what they expected me to do. Fall apart somewhere they couldn't see. They had no idea I'd been watching them for 3 months. Let me back up. It started the way these things always do, with small things I explained away because I loved them. My mother had been a single parent since my father died when I was 9. She raised me and Daniel on a teacher's salary, and she'd done it with dignity. I respected her more than almost anyone. When she retired 4 years ago, I helped her set up her finances. I checked in monthly. I paid for her car insurance and her medications without being asked. Daniel was different. He was 34, still bouncing between jobs, always with a reason that made sense until it didn't. I lent him money twice, once for rent, once for a car repair that seemed to cost more than any car repair I'd ever heard of. Both times, he paid me back. Mostly. Then last year, I inherited $312,000 from my grandmother on my father's side. She'd been quietly saving for decades, living in the same small house, driving the same 2003 Camry, and leaving almost everything to the grandchildren her son adored. I was the only one who received anything. My grandmother had met Daniel once, and apparently that was enough. I didn't tell anyone. I put it in a high-yield savings account, transferred my regular bills to a separate checking account, and kept my life looking exactly the same. Same apartment, same car, same Thursday night dinners with my mother. But somehow, within 6 weeks, the question started. My mother began bringing up money in ways she never had before. Not asking directly, she was never direct, but circling. "Rachel, you've always been so smart with your finances. Do you have a financial advisor? You should really think about diversifying." That kind of thing. Daniel started texting more. Checking in, he called it. Asking how work was, how I was feeling, whether I was stressed. Sweet, almost. Unfamiliar. Then came the comments that had a shape to them. "You're still renting? At your age? You should really think about real estate. Maybe something out of state where prices are lower. You work so hard, Rach. You should let people help you manage things. You can't do everything alone. I've been reading about financial scams targeting young professional women. You should be careful who you trust at that firm of yours. That last one was from my mother, said with a warm hand on my arm, eyes soft with what looked like genuine concern. I remember driving home that night thinking, she's trying to tell me something, I just didn't understand yet what it was. The real moment of clarity came on a Wednesday afternoon when I stopped by my mother's house unannounced because I'd baked too many lemon bars and she loved them. I let myself in with my spare key. The kitchen light was on. They were at the kitchen table. Daniel had his laptop open. My mother was leaning over his shoulder, reading something on the screen, her reading glasses pushed up into her hair. They looked focused. Serious. The way people look when they're working on something that matters. They didn't hear me come in. I heard my mother say, "The account number is right there." She gave it to me 2 Christmases ago in case of emergency. Daniel nodded. And she won't check it until end of month. She only checks it monthly, right? My mother. She has it set to auto summary. We have time. I stood in the hallway for exactly 4 seconds. Long enough to understand. Short enough that they didn't see me. Then I set the lemon bars down on the entryway table, walked back out the front door, got in my car, and sat very still in the driveway. My mother had my account number. From an emergency contact form I'd filled out years ago, back when I still thought emergencies were things like car accidents and hospital stays. I drove home. I changed every password, every PIN, every security question. I enabled transaction alerts on every account. I called my bank's fraud department and flagged my account for monitoring without closing it. And then I called my attorney, a woman named Sylvia Park who'd helped me with my grandmother's estate. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Don't confront them yet. Let's see what they're planning." So I waited. I watched. I set the table exactly how they liked it and waited for them to sit down. What I didn't know, what they absolutely could not have imagined, was that when my grandmother died, she'd left me something besides the money. She'd left me her house. A small property in Asheville, worth about $280,000 by current estimates, still in probate when she passed. It had been quietly transferred into my name 6 weeks after the inheritance. No announcement. No celebration. Just a deed that arrived in a certified envelope I signed for and filed away. The deed that Daniel had apparently found while going through my filing cabinet the one time I'd let him stay at my apartment while I was at a conference. The deed they were now attempting to leverage. What they didn't know was that I'd already had the property retitled through my attorney's office with a completely separate document trail 2 months before this morning's withdrawal. The account they'd accessed? I'd been quietly moving the inheritance out for 6 weeks. What remained was $47,500 I'd left there on purpose. Bet. The dinner invitation arrived the next day. Casual tone. Daniel's handwriting on a paper card, which was theatrical even for him. Mom made your favorite. Saturday, 6 p.m., just us. I texted back. Wouldn't miss it. Then I called Sylvia. They moved. She said, so do we. The Saturday dinner was a performance, and I gave the performance of my life. I wore the blue dress my mother always said made me look like I was trying too hard. I brought wine. I hugged them both at the door and told my mother the house smelled wonderful, which it did. We sat down to pot roast and green beans and my mother's famous rolls. Daniel poured the wine. The conversation was warm, normal, like something from a life I no longer lived. Then, over dessert, my mother set down her fork. Rachel, she said gently, we need to talk about your financial situation. I looked up. Oh? We've been worried about you. She folded her hands on the table. Sincere eyes. Practiced concern. You work yourself to the bone and you have no real assets, no property, no investments. Your savings are just sitting in a low-yield account doing nothing. I nodded slowly. I know. It's something I've been thinking about. Daniel leaned forward. We actually found something. An investment opportunity. Local real estate trust, very reputable. But the window is closing soon. He slid a folder across the table. We were hoping you'd let us help you manage the transfer. Given your account information is already accessible to Mom, for emergencies it could be handled quickly. Seamlessly. I picked up the folder, flipped through it, nodded thoughtfully. And the Asheville property? I asked. The air changed. My mother's hands stilled on the table. Daniel's eyes went to her, then back to me. What do you mean? He said carefully. I set the folder down and looked at them both. I'm asking because I know you found the deed. And I know you've already made inquiries about listing it. I tilted my head slightly. The real estate agent you contacted? Her office manager is someone I went to college with. She called me 3 weeks ago. My mother's face was doing something I'd never seen it do before. Not guilt exactly, more like recalculation. Daniel started to speak. Rachel, we were trying to help. You accessed my savings account Thursday morning, I said quietly. $47,500. Initiated through the emergency access my mother had from an old form. I folded my hands on the table, mirroring my mother's posture exactly. That's wire fraud. That's elder financial manipulation used as cover. And that's unauthorized access to financial accounts. Silence. My mother said, very softly. You're overreacting. I have a folder too, I said. I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope Sylvia had prepared. Account records. Transfer logs. The voicemail Daniel had left with the real estate agent discussing my property without my knowledge. A text thread where he'd sent my deed to a third party I didn't recognize. A recording of their kitchen conversation legal in North Carolina with one-party consent that I'd captured on my phone, which I'd quietly set to record before walking back out with the lemon bars. I set it all on the table between the pot roast and the rolls. My mother stared at it. I filed a report this morning, I said. Fraud. Unauthorized financial access. Attempted property transfer without owner consent. I stood up and smoothed my dress. The $47,500 has already been flagged and will be returned. My accounts have been closed and reopened under new credentials. The Asheville property is held in a trust you cannot touch. Daniel's voice cracked. Rachel, just listen. I filed a restraining order too, I said. Both of you, effective Monday. My mother's eyes filled. She reached across the table. We're your family. I looked at her hand. Then at her face. Family doesn't use emergency access to fund their own plans, I said. Family doesn't search a daughter's filing cabinet. Family doesn't sit at this table and pitch an investment scheme while pretending to be worried. I picked up my purse. I made your recipe for the rolls, by the way. I brought them. They're in my car. I thought about leaving them, but I think I'll keep them. I drove home in complete silence. No music. No podcasts. The city moved around me, full of people living their ordinary lives, and I drove through it like something had been surgically removed from my chest. Not painlessly, but cleanly. I didn't cry until I was inside my apartment with the door locked. Then I cried for 22 minutes exactly. I know, because I was watching the clock. I'd given myself until 8 o'clock, and I kept that appointment. At 8, I washed my face, made tea, and called Sylvia. It's done, I said. She said, how are you? I looked out the window at the city lights below. I've been better, but I've also been worse. The next 3 weeks moved like water through a narrow pipe. Fast, pressurized, inevitable. The fraud report triggered an automatic bank investigation. The funds were recovered within 9 days. Daniel, it turned out, had already sent $12,000 to an account registered to an LLC neither my mother nor I recognized, something Sylvia's forensic contact found while tracing the transfer. That opened a separate investigation that I hadn't anticipated and honestly didn't feel responsible for. My mother called 14 times. I didn't answer. She sent a letter, an actual paper letter, her handwriting, 2 full pages that said she'd been pressured by Daniel, that she hadn't understood what she was signing, that she loved me and was afraid. I read it 3 times. Then I gave it to Sylvia. Not because I didn't believe parts of it, but because love and evidence are two different things, and in a proceeding, only one of them counts. The hearing was held on a Tuesday morning in a courtroom that smelled like floor cleaner and recycled air. I wore gray. I sat on one side of the room. My mother and Daniel sat on the other, with a public defender who looked like he hadn't slept in several days. The judge reviewed everything. She asked clarifying questions about the timeline. She looked at the recording transcript, the account records, the real estate inquiry log. Then she looked at me and said, "Miss Donovan, given the full scope of what's been submitted, the court is prepared to move forward on all counts. Is there anything you'd like to say before we proceed?" The room was very quiet. I thought about my father, who died when I was 9 and left my mother to carry everything. I thought about the woman she'd been then, fierce, steady, a little frightening in the best way. I thought about Daniel at 12, crying at the funeral because he didn't understand yet that you were supposed to hold it together in public. I thought about the lemon bars I'd left on the entryway table. Whether she'd eaten them, whether they were still there, going stale on the table by the door. "No," I said. "I think the folder says everything." The hammer came down. The fraud charges were upheld. Restitution ordered in full. Daniel's LLC was referred to a separate financial crimes unit. My mother received a lesser charge given evidence of coercion and was ordered into mandatory financial ethics counseling, something the judge apparently had the power to do and chose to use. The restraining orders were made permanent pending review at 6 months. I walked out of the courthouse into sunlight that felt almost aggressive in its brightness. Sylvia was beside me, already on her phone, already moving to the next thing. That's what I liked about her. She didn't make it a moment, she just kept working. My phone buzzed. A message from Daniel's number that I hadn't yet blocked. "You destroyed this family." I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back. "I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped pretending it wasn't already broken." I blocked the number. Put my phone in my bag. Stood on the courthouse steps with the sun on my face and thought about the Asheville house, the little property my grandmother had owned for 40 years. With the covered porch she used to sit on and the oak tree in the back that was probably older than she was. I'd never actually been inside. I'd only seen photos. I pulled up a map and looked at the drive from Charlotte. 3 hours. Maybe 3.5 with traffic. Doable on a weekend. I thought about what it might look like in early spring. Whether the oak tree was budding yet. Whether the porch needed paint. Whether there was anything in the kitchen worth salvaging, or whether I'd start from scratch. I thought about the woman my grandmother had been: quiet, deliberate, patient. She'd built her whole life one careful decision at a time. She'd saved for decades without anyone knowing. She'd left everything to the granddaughter she believed in, not because I was perfect, but because she saw something in me that I was still learning to see in myself. I called my best friend, Jenna, who picked up immediately. "How'd it go?" "It's done." "Are you okay?" I thought about the honest answer. About the 22 minutes of crying and the 3-hour drive I was already planning and the oak tree I'd never stood under. "I will be," I said. "Hey, do you want to take a road trip this weekend?" She said yes before I finished the sentence. That's the thing about losing people you loved. It tears something open in you that is extraordinarily painful. But sometimes, once the tearing is done, you notice what was always there underneath. And sometimes what's underneath, they thought they knew me. They thought they'd mapped every corner of my life, every account, every vulnerability. They thought I was the kind of woman who would crumble quietly and rebuild herself around whatever they left behind. They forgot that I spend my days finding exactly what people try to hide. They forgot that I inherited something more than money. They forgot who raised me to be careful. She just didn't count on me being careful about her.